Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Scott Manley, who has the most interesting title of our speakers today. He is the Astrogamer, a rare fusion of gaming and science, and a powerful combination. So, please welcome Scott Manley.
Hello. Okay. Hello? Okay, I'm not sure if this is on or not. Oh, yes, we have it. Hello. So yeah, I'm not a scientist by trade. I'm not an astronaut, but I do play one on the internet. I play a lot of video games on the internet and use them as an opportunity to teach science. But I was asked to actually talk about asteroids in video games. And asteroids in video games are kind of like asteroids in movies. They are repurposed to be useful to the plot and the gameplay. So what you see in games frequently isn't what we get in reality, but we're going to go through that. So hopefully, yes, here we go. Excellent. So this is where I first heard about asteroids. Empire Strikes Back, 1980. Now, it wasn't the first Star Wars movie with asteroids. Technically, Star Wars had Alderaan blown into pieces. But they made a video game of this in 1985. It was a very simple green screen version. Later on, you have the same notion of flying through the asteroid belt in Star Fox. Elite Dangerous does the same thing. The asteroids are essentially hazards to be avoided and to make fighting more interesting. And I forgot to put a title on this. So this is Star Citizen, which is still in development at this time. So these are asteroids as navigational hazards. In real life, asteroids are never that close together. If you were standing on an asteroid in the main asteroid belt looking out, odds are you would not be able to see another asteroid because they are so far apart. So asteroids as navigational threat is one thing, and this is skipping too fast. There we go. You'd think I'd do this better, but my 5 favorite games with asteroids in them. I'm going to start. In 1979, before Empire Strikes Back, we have, of course, Asteroids by Atari. They were based out this way, and in fact, the original creator of this, I think, just lives relatively near to here. He took the board for Lunar Lander, which is another landmark space game, and added some new circuits and created this notion of the little spaceship flying around shooting asteroids. Now, this was a pretty simple thing, but back then, a 2-dimensional motion in a game was a pretty rare thing. Furthermore, this actually taught me Newtonian mechanics. Up until that point, I'd thought about spacecraft turning like planes, but Asteroids does it properly. So I learned that when an object starts moving, it keeps moving. So this is the kind of beginning of my career in science and everything. Moving on to nowadays, the nearest equivalent of Asteroids nowadays is Super Stardust, which is an insanely intense game. And I've got some animations up the top here. You know, in this case, you're protecting a planet from asteroids which are being dropped by some unknown antagonist. You have tons of weapons at your disposal. It is super fast, super energetic, and it would be on my list of favorite asteroid games. It's the modern equivalent. Moving on, we have a little more calming things down, let's say. Space Engineers is a game which is still being developed, and in this case, the asteroids are part of the scenery. You are mining these asteroids to get resources, and then you're building something. This is like Minecraft in space. It's really, really good. Players work together to build these amazing bases. There's not really much else to do in it right now other than build amazing bases and spaceships, inspired by all sorts of things. Look, we have an X-Wing fighter. We have Slave One from Star Wars. Down here, we have Planet Express from Futurama. And the International Space Station. People built these things, and these are some of the simpler items that people build in this game. Now, in terms of asteroid mining, sure, that's in a lot of games. Space Engineers makes an integral part of the game, but there's one game that really goes way out there with asteroid mining. EVE Online is an interesting video game phenomenon. It's not really for kids, I'll point that out. It's sometimes called spreadsheets in space because people literally build out these big and analytical spreadsheets to look at the game. But it has an economy where everything in the game is built by the players, and to build it, yes, there we go, you have to mine materials from the asteroids, and hopefully this will start playing. There we go. So You mine the materials, somebody will take those materials, build them into spaceships, those spaceships will then perhaps be used for other things. Perhaps you use them for mining more asteroids. Perhaps you use them to fight battles. And some of the battles in this game are like landmark events in video games. So around February, I think, 2014, there was a giant battle in a system in the game called B-5-RB. This battle, according to economists and people that study the economy, the economy in this game is so complicated that academics study it. They analyzed this and they came up with a monetary value. And over the course of the battle, which was 22 hours, there were 7,500 players from all over the world involved. And the loss of virtual spaceships, internet spaceships, $300,000, right, for an event in a video game. Nobody spent that money on it, but that's how much effort and time would have been taken to put this thing together. So EVE Online, one of the best asteroid games out there, not for kids. We're going to step away from spaceships. You see, there's this series called Final Fantasy. You probably heard about it. And in Final Fantasy, you have wizards and warriors, and the wizards have fireballs and stuff. But in many of the games, the wizards have this asteroid or this meteor spell. Oh, and the sound isn't here. This is Vivi bringing down a magical asteroid. Bringing down a magical asteroid on his target, and I should have edited the sound out of that, but it was called Final Fantasy because the company expected that they would go out of business after releasing this. 15 games later, it's a phenomenon unto itself. But really, the highlight of Asteroids, I guess, in the Final Fantasy games would be Final Fantasy VII, where the antagonist, Sephiroth, literally calls down a gigantic magical asteroid called Meteor, which is going to devastate the entire world. And through the second half of the game, the protagonists are, of course, exploring the world, trying to figure out how to stop this threat to the entire planet. And while searching, I also found this fun image of the Chelyabinsk meteor flying across a Final Fantasy background. Quick allusion, since we're talking about asteroids as weapons, because gameplay get to do these things. There's a mission in Mass Effect, definitely not a game for kids, some salty language in there, where, alien terrorists strap engines to an asteroid and try to crash it into a planet. So you can have fun stopping them if you play that game. And it's not... Come on! There we go. And finally, the one game that actually treats asteroids correctly is Kerbal Space Program. The Kerbal Space Program started out as a kind of joke little sandbox game with little green men flying rockets, and it's evolved into the most comprehensive space simulator out there. It does amazing things, and it's been fantastic in the way that it's taught kids rocket science. Like literal rocket science is the kind of thing that people have learned from this. So last year they introduced Asteroids to the game officially. And that was the Asteroid Redirect mission created in collaboration with NASA. And just today, actually, I forgot to say there's one other thing that Kerbal Space Program has done with asteroids, and people have used it as giant basketballs. So, we've had navigation, hazards, weapons, threats to civilization, and giant space basketballs. But today, yes, the developers of Kerbal Space Program have released an official mod in collaboration with B612. It is their version of the Sentinel spacecraft, which you can put on top of your own virtual rocket and try to launch it into the appropriate orbit. And I will put up a prize of some games for the people that can do this with the least amount of fuel, the smallest rocket, the cheapest rocket. So you can download that from their website today. It's Kerbal Space Program. And that's the end of this. I'm Scott Manley. Any questions? Fly safe. I develop software, but I do not develop these games because I don't have this time. I just play these on the internet.
All right. Thank you very much.
Oh, we get one more. I'll ask questions later.